So why would anyone care what I have to say at all? Across the board. I think my intent of trying to ease my suffering and the suffering of others by the sharing of ideas, which we both can ease our pains together as a result of the ideas, is nice on paper. However, I have to be careful as to not talk down onto anyone else, for I don't believe I am above anyone else, but I could come across as exactly that, as if I know it all, as if I have some ultimate confidence in what I have to say. However, this is not the case. I don't. I have some amount of confidence in what I say and think, because otherwise it wouldn't be my belief. It would be something else, until I did have that confidence. But even then, it's limited, because when something else I believe to be more fitting comes along, it will replace what was once there. There's always the exception of contradiction, where I don't act in accordance to my beliefs, but that's a sign of a problem. And I would assess myself before sharing something that would obviously be contradictory, or I would make direct note that it is contradictory. I'd also like to mention that people online like to talk with total confidence and state things as if they're impeccable, as if it would be impossible for them to be wrong. YouTube tries to recommend videos that are a similar format to this, someone talking to a camera, whether virtual or real life, and they state things how they are, in total confidence, without any possibility of gray area or their own imperfections. This is something I want to avoid, and I'm going to try to avoid. I don't like when people tell me how I'm feeling, or they tell me what I'm thinking, or they tell me what I am. Just because they say it with confidence does not make it suddenly true. What I want to bring is an assortment of ideas, and I intend to branch out. And this is information that can be taken or left. I don't say that my words are truth or fact, but I say my words are beliefs created on and based on from knowledge and experience. These are both flawed, but despite this, I think there might be some value for those who believe their own words to be even more flawed than my own. Or perhaps, if I somehow attached myself to some string of words from someone else and then held on to it and then wrote it in one of these documents and then I shared it with you, it could have some impact on you, and hopefully a positive one. But why might someone actually care? Maybe that's what I want to do, to share ideas and information that can be helpful, but that's just my attempt. Why would anyone want to listen? There are various channels, all rambling about their woes and misfortunes, their depressions or their flaws, and that's fine. I think that's okay to share. I have many woes, I have many flaws, and I have many more issues, but to share them online does not bring about change, does not fix the situation. It is very easy for someone to go, "Oh, I'm sorry about that," or some other equivalent rehashed in another form, and then they move on with their lives without trying to help or change what is hurting the person. This isn't something I'm aiming for. I want to branch away from venting sadness and instead focus on dealing with it, and my means of dealing with it, which I believe to be helpful, but it does not mean it will be. Although I will mention that it is okay for someone to talk about their life and the experiences within it, because that is a showcase of their humanity. It shows that we all have faults, and none of us are perfect. At one point or another, I would like to do this myself, which might actually help people, and that's literally what I'm here for. One might care as a result of agreeing with my ideas or beliefs, and they might help the person work through their own problems. If not, then the only thing they've lost is their time. Or if they disagree because they believe they know a better method for dealing with their pain or issue or woe, they can share it with me, and if I believe it to be better, then I can use their method. There's also another scenario where they may have lost their time, but it was okay, because they were lost in the ideas of someone else, and not their own, and that would be a benefit to them if they wanted to escape their own mind, even temporarily. It becomes beneficial to those who don't know better, and it becomes better for me, because if someone does know better, and they're willing to share it, then I get that. This helps explain one reason as to why someone might care, because if they're actively looking for something and don't know how to deal with it, they might come across something I've made, and from there they can decide to proceed. However, as you might imagine, there are so many people, and there's so many methods for people to deal with their problems or feelings, so why might someone consider my methods in particular? What do I offer in specific to be more appealing than just about anyone else? Well, of course, that just becomes subjective. Someone would have to find my means of speech appealing, or maybe the form I choose to project myself with, or something even as simple as my voice. These could all be appealing as to build a level of trust, and then that trust leads to the words I'm saying to be considered worthwhile. My own admittance to my lack of confidence, to a certain extent, because my willingness to change ideas that I deem better could be seen as controversial, but to others, it could be a positive sign, as to finding someone who isn't static and stuck in the same form forever. I'm not special, and I don't bring anything particularly special, but I do bring equal ground. An issue I find with online content of a similar form to mine is that it tends to be a person talking down to others, rather than trying to bring them up. Or if they aren't talking down on you, they look down upon you, or they make it seem so. as if they're greater, as if they know better than you. And trust me, I'm better than no one, and I know better than no one, but I want to share what I think I know. I would also like to mention that by using this format, I can bring in specific people. If I use a furry avatar, that will cut off a lot of people that don't like that type of thing, but now, instead of listening to me, they've branched off to someone else. If I were to use a human avatar, or just use a camera, I could appeal to a broader audience, because we're all human, but not all of us like anthropomorphic animal characters. Yet, it must be noted, by using these forms, it can appeal to those specific people, which would be my goal, because I would like to think that there tends to be more of an appeal to that specific group rather than others, but I could be wrong. And this is something I'll have to find out as I continue doing this. How did I come to this belief? Well, as you might guess, I'm in VR chat. So when I'm chatting with others, especially furries, I found that they best linked up with my ideas when I would talk about things in my systems and my beliefs. And they were able to listen and hear what I had to say more so than other groups of individuals. But once again, that's a very small sample size, and it might not be accurate or indicative of reality. I would also like to mention that even thumbnails, titles, descriptions, they all play a part in appealing or not appealing to certain people. I'm trying to appeal to people that I think would want to see or hear this. That doesn't mean I can properly execute my attempt. And so people may not find my content, or it possibly would appeal to the wrong people, thus causing more people to not care about what I have to say. Likewise, someone might think I'm talking down to them, even though I'm not. And if I'm appealing to the wrong people, that might even seem like more so the case than not. Once again, in my imperfections, I unfortunately can't perfectly execute what I want from the internal world into the external world. But I think that's just part of being human. To someone who might just click on one of my videos, who has not listened to this one or the introduction, how would they know I have these feelings? How would they know I don't look down upon them, but I'm trying to bring them up? Or even just make them aware of different ideas. I view every viewer and listener as an equal because they aren't equal. Even if I have these feelings and thoughts, how can this be executed in rambles or explanations of systems that have worked in easing my pain? How might someone not interpret it as me talking down on them, just as I have interpreted many online videos as others talking down to me? I don't know, but I'm trying to figure it out, and I think the best thing I can do right now is be direct about it with something like this. Even if someone were to never click on this video, for all those who might click on the channel page, now see this title and thumbnail, which might influence their thought process without ever actually listening to the video. So really, the only reason someone might listen to what I have to say is that they were looking for what I have to say, and that tends to be a lot less connected to me, the person, the individual, than it is from the content itself, the words being read aloud. No one cares about what I have to say, but they do care about the digestion of information that I put forth, and that is the information they seek, and the digester of that information just happened to be me. It could have been anyone else, and it will be, and already has been other people, well, with a mix of chance and their own personal backgrounds, and maybe with the help of algorithms, or even fate. If you believe in fate, they happen to listen to me, or try to. This becomes slightly a problem because I want to appeal to people who think similarly to me. For those people, I believe, would be helped most with what I have to say, because we already have some similar thoughts, and that means there can be a lot more of a crossover. It becomes especially beneficial if they had not thought of what I have, or they have thought what I haven't. My issue is attempting to find and detect those specific people, because I have not done a good job of it at this time. But I hope I can try and appeal to those people, for I consider those my people, in quotation marks, meaning that they would get along and probably be good acquaintances or friends. In something as generalized as the internet, with many different types of people and with it many different ideas, it's very rare to find someone who thinks similarly. But this might be seen as me not trying hard enough, or I'm looking in the wrong areas, or just my unwillingness to adapt to others in some way so we can have a friendship that's not totally perfect in my view. Even if I get lucky enough to come across such a person, there's no reason for them to interact with me or acknowledge my existence. In many such cases, for them, I do not exist unless I initiate. And even if I do initiate, there's no reason for them to react back. I've also noticed a trend where maybe I can find one or two of these people, but they're terribly busy or focused on their meeting, so they aren't around to chat. Despite all this breaking down of why might someone want to listen to me, I also need to acknowledge why someone wouldn't want to listen to me. And to this, there are far more reasons why someone wouldn't want to listen. Some of the most prominent ones being my lack of experience, my lack of genuine hope, my own willingness to change, my behaviors, and my judgments. Not to say that these would invalidate anything I've said to you that you find meaningful, because those things that I've said that you find meaningful are more likely to be of someone else's thought and not my own. And that's why you were able to get something and take away something good for them. This is why I do intend to put together a compilation of influences for those who might be beneficial to you more than just my own words. So I have a genuine lack of life experience. This means that my ideas and systems are limited to that lack of experience. You might think of this as the difference between generations or ages, where the older person maintains far more wisdom and experience than the young person, but I would also take into account that I have especially little experience for my particular age group. Having material experience can be greatly beneficial in changing your ideas or systems. It can help you open up to things you would have never considered, and yet that is something that is very limited in me. And so this is something you have to be aware of when I speak about anything. My experiences are limited, and within those limited experiences, there have been a large quantity of just suffering and pain. And because I know little of anything else, this could make you also believe I might know a little bit more in that particular area, but it could also make you think the opposite. For if I do not know what true goodness is like, how could I know what true suffering is like? This makes you wonder something like, if many of your ideas aren't from experience, what are they from? In response, I tell you it's a half-truth. As I need to say, I haven't done much outside of reading and talking to others. Like I've never chomped down a tree or played a game of tennis. And perhaps these aren't the best examples, but they are indications of my lack of expansion as a person, making me a lot more focused around what I choose to consume or what is presented to me to consume. For me, I've been most influenced by books and people, and so when I speak of something that might actually be helpful, that's where it tends to be from. I just happen to be the digester in the right time and place, and you just happen to be the listener, which benefits both of us, but this further emphasizes that it isn't about me, but the things that I've put inside of me without much of my active awareness, or maybe what I have actively put inside of me with my awareness. Often, I try to read something for a particular purpose, but that doesn't mean that particular purpose will be fulfilled, and there's a tendency I'll learn something entirely different instead. As much as I want to have a focus on things becoming better, getting better, things changing, things improving, and avoiding the usual, I'm sad, this is why, and I've lost hope, it doesn't matter if that's what I genuinely believe. If I genuinely believe that hope is totally lost and there is no reason for anything I'm doing, and that I'm unable to be helped and I cannot help others, then that will shine through my writing. Even if I want to help others to feel better, and that is totally true, if I don't genuinely believe I can give ideas or hopes to those people, they will notice. And ultimately, I will hurt others instead of help, which is something I want to avoid. I often flip through having hope and losing hope. For example, as I was writing this particular paragraph, I had no hope. However, if I'm reading it aloud to you, I must have some amount of hope in this particular moment. However, when you're listening, that hope might be gone. The point is, when the content is written, that is what you'll be hearing and understanding. Hopefully, things will get better, but I think many of us aren't so certain of that future. But all we can do is try to be okay in the present. Change is an important aspect of trying to make things better. How I go about change is not so much with the physical world, but with the mental world. And so when I talk about dealing with problems, I think about dealing with those problems internally. This isn't a totally awful way going about dealing with your internal issues and sufferings. Unfortunately, it doesn't encompass all problems. There are many times where the external environment is the cause of your problems, and that's what needs to be changed. But if you're so focused on the internal, you will begin to believe the issue is you. This can become difficult, so you don't want to blame others for your own problems, but you also don't want to blame yourself for what you don't have control over. I have many ongoing battles internally and externally, and it can be difficult to figure out which ones are actually internal and which ones are actually external. If we get this wrong, we can end up hurting ourselves or even hating ourselves because we believe that we are the issue. Well, actually, it is others that are the issue, and they're the ones that need the change, not us. This comes down to your own beliefs of what is right and wrong, and what a person can and cannot do. And these ideas tend to be told to you from an early age. You believe you know right and wrong, and you believe that it makes sense, but that's only because you've been told one particular system of right and wrong. And when we get older, we are told that things aren't actually so black and white. I think almost every American high schooler has had to read Shakespeare, and I think that fair is foul and foul is fair is the indication that we should start questioning our beliefs of what is right and wrong. Do you think that those who are rich and abuse others have the same beliefs of right and wrong as the poor man? No, obviously not. Are there exceptions to the rule? Yes, always. There are always exceptions to the rule. However, the point is, you should think and question what you have not thought of and questioned for a long time. For within that, you might find reasons for your own suffering. And because I have not done enough of this, it can be hard for someone to take me seriously. If I have a misconception of an issue, which I believe to be internal, but it's actually an external problem, I look like I'm the one needing help most. And then I'm not really helping anyone. I'm really just asking for help. This can be okay, but my goal is to help, not be helped. As being helped is just a hope, just in addition to the main goal. This plays into my behaviors. Like mentioned before, I can act in contradiction to my beliefs, making it obvious that I have a problem. Once again, this doesn't help anyone, because if I share a belief, an idea, or a system that is flawed and contradictory to how I do things in reality, the belief, idea, or system is no longer going to help someone. I would like to think everything I say, do, and think is flawed, but there is also a range of how flawed I really am. So sometimes something less flawed can be beneficial, but something utterly flawed won't be helpful at all. Eventually, perhaps even now, I can give my thoughts or feelings on something, or my means of handling something, and it makes no sense to anyone besides me, and I didn't help anyone. I have to be attentive to my own behaviors, and this can be very tricky and energy consuming, and even if I have spent a lot of time on these behaviors, I will and can slip up on some, for I believe they can exist for one reason, but they actually are there for another. An example of this might be for a certain time period where I was playing VR chat every day when I didn't work, and I would try to play guitar while listening to conversations and sometimes chiming in. I believed the behavior was to make me play more guitar. Well, actually, it was to find more people to make me feel less lonely. And the guitar was just an excuse to go and find those people. It didn't end in success, so when I stopped, I realized that was actually my goal, despite lying to myself to think it was for another reason. Sometimes it can be okay to lie to yourself. However, in this case, it was a sign that I wasn't even aware of my own actions. If I'm not aware of my own actions or why I'm doing something or why I'm not doing something, how can I tell others why I think or act in a certain way? I can't. And if I try to, and I don't realize it doesn't make sense or doesn't add up to reality, no one gets help. And I look even more like a fool than I normally would. This doesn't even touch upon circular behavior, where I do the same thing over and over again, expecting a difference until I realize how foolish it is, and only until then do I move on or change. If I share this circular problem, I will have a solution, and then what's the point of sharing it? How many circular problems do I have that are part of other problems that aren't circular? It's hard to know, and because of that, it's hard to know if what I'm actually saying makes sense to others, or if it just sounds like insanity. Only recently have I realized how judgmental I am. As I've been totally unaware of it, I've pushed away people or hurt them with judgments, when I didn't even realize that was what I was doing. I think we all do some level of judging, but my judgments were almost always negative, which is why someone might be upset or want to get away from me. These could come through my writing as well. I might be judging a certain group of people without realizing it, or judging myself negatively, which I believe to be helpful, but is actually harmful. And I believe people are supposed to get something out of that. Even here, now, am I judging myself too harshly in the value of my words, thoughts, and beliefs? I don't know. And so, due to always being in a state of judging, I can and am trying to correct how I judge things. For example, I went on a hike with a friend, and I was judging her for actions she would take. And due to my own tonality and her previous data on me, she believed I was negatively judging her, when that was not the case. And it was cleared up, because I tried my hardest to make it so. This shows that even with some level of awareness, even in my speech, how I say words, and what words I use, I can be perceived as negatively judging someone, when I'm not even trying to do that at all. These negative judgments have not only been placed upon others, but also myself. And because they are inaccurate and not representative of reality, they only harm instead of help. And this causes other systems to be problematic. Everything just goes a bit haywire. So when I was to share my thoughts on something, and that something is totally flawed, just from negative judgment upon myself, no one will find something useful in that. Briefly, I'd like to mention that I shared all of my writing with a friend of mine in reference to this document as well, with what I've shared with you, and he told me I was actually too harsh on myself, and by sharing this, it would actually take away my credibility, because it seemed as if I couldn't even trust myself, so how could anyone else trust my ideas? Well, I do have hope that I will be more trusting of myself, and since this was originally written, I have begun to trust myself more. And even when rereading all that I've written, some things have passed, but I try to make adjustments to them to accurately depict my modern feelings. People will care about what I have to say if they want to, and they won't care if they don't want to, and that's okay. And I have to be okay with that. This doesn't encompass all the reasons why someone may or may not listen to what I have to say, but despite this, it covers enough ground to give you an idea of the kind of people who might listen to me and those who might not, along with what you might want to consider when I do speak and what you might not want to consider. I invite you, the viewer, to critically listen to what I have to say, critique me, even mentally, and don't allow me to come off as someone with answers or whole truths. Instead, critically find where I'm right and wrong, in your own mind, and from there, see what you can get out of it. I don't view you as a sheep, I see you as a person, and people can think for themselves, but they can just as easily be influenced by others. Be careful with your influences, and if you think I've said something that might be helpful to you, make sure that is actually so, or do your best to. I'm just a person on the internet. Your trust to me should be limited, but I will do my best to be logical, accurate, and honest, and I will try to say the things that I believe people need to hear and that actually ends up being helpful.